think we live streamed that. Stephen, would you check and just make sure that it's live streaming to the places it's supposed to live stream?
HeartMind Alchemy.
Yeah. Are we good? Sorry, everybody, just hang on a minute while we verify.
Yes, we are there. I think we're there. Yes. How about that? Yes, we are. Holly, I'm just wondering one thing. None of these have share options on it, and it would be great for people to be able to share. I don't know whether you can do that via your special restream program.
That's a great question. I don't know why that's the case.
That's right. It may be just, and so people can find this. So if you're listening and you're watching us, you can find it on the HeartMind Alchemy Lab, obviously. And if you're watching that now, that's probably where you are. What are the other channels they can find it on, Holly?
Enlightened World Living is the other place that it is. And I'm also going to share it to HeartMind Alchemy page itself. Hoping that will work as well. So hang on. I'm going to share it there. It is strange that I'm not quite sure why it does that. Some things to figure out. Okay.
And it may be, let me just double check for you, Holly. I can only share it. So if you're wanting to share this, if you're watching and you want to share it, you have to go to Enlightened World Living to share. You can't share it. It obviously doesn't have an on stream button. So yeah, it is now shared to my profile, to HeartMind Alchemy Lab, and Enlightened World Living. So there we go. That's a few.
There we go. Thank you.
Wonderful.
All right, great. So welcome to HeartMind Happy Hour. I am your host, Holly Copeland, co-owner of HeartMind Alchemy with Stephen Altair, and we produce workshops and do coaching and lead meditation groups, and we have an upcoming Dream Yourself into Awakening course that we're doing with Kiefer O'Sullivan, neuroscientist here. And in celebration of that, and to sort of whet your appetite, we're going to have a conversation about illuminating your life through dreaming and the practices of dream yoga and lucid dreaming, and how you might use those practices to live a better life. To be happier, to be calmer, in a calmer state of mind, all kinds of positive life benefits. And it's not just about dreaming at all, right? Dreaming is just a state of consciousness that we go into the dream world. But it has very much to do with actually bringing those dreaming practices into our so-called waking life. And so we really, in these practices, start to merge the boundaries and stop thinking about our dream life as this isolated thing that we lay down to bed and go to sleep, and we don't really pay much attention to it except hope that we get a good night's sleep, which arguably for some is a challenge, and maybe even these practices can actually help with that, help you get a better night's sleep by paying more attention to your consciousness in the dream state. And as we'll discuss in the upcoming hour, it goes way beyond getting a good night's sleep into how these practices can actually, as I talked about, facilitate awakening in every aspect of your life, into being more present, more aware, more conscious as a human being. And so they're really highly relevant to an overall well-rounded human being, in my view. And I'm really honored and excited to share this conversation with my colleagues and dear friends. Kiefer O'Sullivan, who's a neuroscientist and has the company Ponder Brain, and does all kinds of wonderful partnerships and collaborations in the realm of neuroscience and consciousness and meditation. And so really, really excited to have you with us. Welcome, Kiefer.
Oh, thank you so much, Holly. It's a real pleasure to be here. And this is a topic that's very close to my heart. So looking forward.
Yeah, and you're a longtime dreamer, lucid dream practitioner, are you not?
Yeah. Actually, dreams and thinking about dreams are one of the things that originally got me into neuroscience as a kid. So this is really coming full circle from child Kiefer to adult neuroscience Kiefer that just goes right back into child Kiefer again. So here we are, full circle. Yeah.
Fantastic. Maybe you just want to take a minute to tell us that story, and just give us a little bit of the taste of what you just mentioned.
Yeah, I think for me growing up, I was always enamored with the way things worked and the way that things could work. And I remember being a very young child and having this ideation that, if somehow you were to, crack my skull open in some weird way. So I'm, maybe like 5, 6 years old, right? No biology education or anything. I used to imagine that there were these like golden, almost like the inside of a watch, golden gears and screws and cogs and all these kind of fine little pieces of machinery that constructed almost this very complicated human being. And since then, I've always been enamored. Well, what are those cogs and springs? What are those little things that turn to really make us who we are and to really affect, the functioning of this really complicated system that we call the brain and the nervous system? And so growing up, I was always enamored by that and, took every science course I could take. And it was really hard to also, break me away from the humanities. And I really, was pushed into that direction a lot. And it came a time where I was like, actually, this neuroscience thing is something that was a huge passion for me. And so that was something my schooling followed for studying neuroscience up in San Rafael when I originally moved to America in Dominican University of California. And then I went to grad school to get my master's in biomedical science, specializing in neuroscience, and spent a lot of time in like the academic, lab work, working with, pathophysiology. Parkinson's was my particular disease condition. And then, but always being in the back of my mind, again, fascinated with the weirder stuff, right? The dreams, the mysticism, the aspects that were kind of fantastical almost of our humanity and this world of ours. And so after my degree and some time in academia, I basically kind of went into the private space or the private sector and started to work with, meditation, states of consciousness, different things like that, lucid dreaming, and have been following that ever since. And so now I'm, doing consulting in the field and a variety of different neuroscientific methods. But I think some of my favorite topics to really engage in are, the meditation, consciousness, lucid dreaming, and all those wonderful sorts of things that we're here to discuss.
Fantastic. Yeah, you and I really share that, I think, love of those topics and the intersection of neuroscience, meditation, consciousness, and dreaming. So
absolutely, yeah, because it all just comes into one thing, right? It's all just one central hub. Yeah,
absolutely. And we really see the emergence, as I was talking about earlier with Max Newland on my earlier interview, of the emergence of that right now in that new book, Spirit Tech, that's been published. And it just feels like a really, this whole area is generating a lot of interest. People are finally recognizing what we knew all along, which is this is the cool place to be.
Yeah. It seems we're almost reaching that cultural point or that cultural like tipping point, right? Where almost like a certain amount of people are now awakening to these possibilities. And, especially in that dream state concept, right? Where we spend, if you're lucky, about a third of our lives asleep. But that's an area that for some reason we never think about or talk about or really engage with. Usually it's the 8 hours that we try and get and not ever think about. And then the other 16 hours of the day, that's everything we think about. And really there's an equal amount to think about every hour of the day, whether you're asleep or awake. So.
Right. Yep. Completely. Wonderful. Well, we're going to get lots of chance to actually dive into and talk about that. And then, of course, I want to also welcome to the show the illustrious and amazing Stephen Altair, mystic and meditation teacher, guru of so many different wisdom traditions, I am never cease to be amazed by your depth of knowledge in personal practice and in teaching and ability to guide so many of us, myself included, in these traditions, and a very active and incredible lucid dreamer himself. And if you are able to hear some of maybe he'll tell a few of these stories today, the lucid dreams that he has had, it kind of blows your mind, to be honest. Breaking the barriers, certainly, of what I ever thought was possible in the dream world. And so I know that introduction is going to fall quite short of all the different things you've done and are, but really welcome to the HeartMind Happy Hour, Stephen.
Thank you, Holly, and thank you, Kiefer. So what an incredible joy to be with you and also everybody that's gathered here, because really it's we who are gathered here, right? There's a collective consciousness. There's, just as you've alluded to, Kiefer and Holly, that this is like the time, and Max Newton did as well, that this is the time. There's a movement, there's a shift into this question that we're all asking, what is awakening? So if we put dream yoga into that structure and that fundamental question that everybody listening is asking, what is awakening? So awakening itself is a wisdom path, right? And it tends to have two components. There's a breakthrough aspect of it, and many of you listening will know exactly what I mean. So you have something in your wisdom path that wakes you up. It tends to be something very profound in it, and it helps you to break through beyond what we see and into the world that Kiefer was talking about, the mystical world, the world of the mystics. We're all mystics, right? We've all got that opportunity to go beyond where we consider our perception actually rests most of the time. And then the second part of that component is that engaging with culture, engaging with each other, engaging for everybody. There was a time when we'd be in monasteries and caves, and I've done a lot of time in monasteries and caves, but there's also this time right now, this collective where we want to do this together. We want to embrace each other together. We want to bring kindness and love to our planet, and we really want to share that. So people are waking up to that. They're saying, I think the pandemic has been an incredible time to look inwards and to take a retreat and offer us all an opportunity to stop, put up our hand and say, stop, this is enough. We've done enough damage to animals, women, children, the planet. It doesn't matter where you look, all the struggles and obstacles are not yours, they're ours. So it gives us an incredible insight into the powers of stillness and the powers of creation. And how do we bring our insights that are often derived from the times we spend in stillness into divine creation, into manifestation? And we often do this on the meditative path. So we engage in a path that involves meditation or contemplation or various practices, and you're all coming to this from your different angles, like light rays shining onto a diamond, right? They're all facets of the diamond. They're all one, but we all take a slightly different color and flavor and taste. And as we deepen spirit, we find a channel, and it's our personal connection. It's our personal way to reach through into this fundamental question we've been asking: what's awakening, and when it happens, what do I do, and what's being, and what's the nature of the unborn, the uncreated, and how do I create? So we bring these aspects through into manifestation, and when we do, just as Kiefer was saying, we actually start to consider really carefully our life, and we look at our life, and exactly as Kiefer said, we spend and sleep a third of our lives. So that's, if you're 60 years old, that's 20 years that you're spending asleep. And for a spiritual practitioner, for somebody who's awake, that's a really big call to inquire, because awakening is over your whole life, 24/7. So I've studied many, many years with the Dalai Lama, with Yogananda, with Mingyur Rinpoche, with Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche, and many other lamas and masters up in the Himalayas. I've sat at the foot of many wonderful guides, mystics, sadhus, people who do things beyond your imagination, truly. And we start to realize that this is about not just life on the cushion, so in our meditation practice, but it's about life off the cushion 24/7 in all aspects of our life. And if we're spending 20 years of our 60 years asleep, and if we know next to nothing about those sleep cycles and about our awareness during sleep, then really it's our responsibility to understand and find out what's going on about and during those 20 years. So I came to the dream yoga path very, very early. When I was brought up in a Carmelite tradition by a mother superior who was my godmother, and she guided me into a lot of the traditional centering practices from the age of 0. And I learned to trust in this spiritual world that is unseen and yet is very, very real. And then at the age of between 2 to 3, I had a dream of being a Tibetan monk, which was a bit of a shock for a young boy brought up in a Christian tradition. And in this dream, I died every single night. So I actually experienced what it was like to be another person, in this case, a Tibetan monk, and to die. So literally, I died and went into the light. So I still remember vividly transiting those buttocks, going into the light and into the sound, the primordial sound at such a young age. And I was, so I came to neuroscience in a different way than Kiefer. I came to it as being the subject of a whole, barrage of tests over a year, because the doctors and my parents thought I might be epileptic, or that there must be something wrong with me because I was waking every night screaming from this experience, because it was actually exactly the same experience, exactly from beginning to end, like a real pointing out, like, don't miss this. And I experienced it every single night for 365 days until a wonderful doctor called Erin, who decided maybe I'd had enough tests, said, maybe he's just overheated. and so they, stripped me naked, and I was left on the bed for a few nights. And of course, that was it. The dream stopped, but it made me incredibly curious about dream yoga, about dreaming, about other worlds. When I was 5, I wrote to NASA and I said I wanted to be on the first starship. I presumed that starships had been built by that stage. I wanted to be on this first starship out of this Earth civilization, so I could explore what lay beyond. So they wrote me back a beautiful letter, which I've still got, saying that hopefully by the time I was 18, they might have made starships, but at that stage they didn't have any, and I was welcome to join them and sign up. So I always love that. I've always looked to what lies beyond, and dream yoga has taken me beautifully in that direction. So I'm, the wisdom, the experiences, the miracles that people speak when we're gathered, they're nothing to do with me. They're simply the result of the blessings and devotion and power of awareness in you that listen, and in all my teachers over many, not just this lifetime, but many lifetimes. So it truly is an incredibly humbling and beautiful path. And dream yoga helps you to understand the 20 years of your 60 years, or the 8 hours of your day that you don't understand. It helps you really develop and understand, and brings you to an understanding of how in a dream, for example, various external appearances arise, and yet in the dream they're nothing but dream consciousness, or we learn about awareness through insight in the dream practices. And this is incredibly valuable when you come into everyday life, and all the objects, the glass that you drink from seems incredibly sticky and real. And of course it is in one context. But when you start to look at energy and consciousness and the vastness of the universe and the boundlessness of our awareness, you actually begin to experience things very deeply and differently. And so dream yoga is a cornerstone, and has been a cornerstone of many of the ancient traditions in many cultures for thousands of years.
Wonderful. And yeah, I myself began dream yoga practice for the first time 3 or so years ago, when I went to a workshop with Andrew Holchek, who has spoken, written about dream yoga, wrote a wonderful book called Dream Yoga, and I took his course. and dove into that world, and really was amazed that that whole world of dream yoga was there, number one, that I hadn't known about it until then, and that it could actually really help my meditative practice by helping me take the practices, the illusory body practices that we'll talk about a little bit later, in terms of this illusory nature of reality, and kind of de-solidify this apparent world that we're in, and use a dream world in order to start to penetrate that illusion a little bit. And so I myself started with a course. That's how I kind of got started on it. Stephen, do you want to just talk a little bit about where does somebody start if they are wanting to dive into this world?
Right. That's a beautiful question. And I know Kiefer can add a lot, and so can you, Holly, because you've taught this course as well. But basically, in our world at the moment, it seems to be increasingly chaotic, and there's uncertainty, and people are not sure where to turn. And the insights of dream yoga, if you actually look at lucid dreaming and some of the insights that have come through into science, into music, into production, and some of the wonderful things that people have seen through dreaming or through visions have actually assisted our planet. So one of the things that I think the simple way to start dream yoga practice is, first of all, just to be aware that you are entering a particular cycle in dreaming that is going to allow you to be open to this kind of awareness. So in the beginning, that's what we do. So we start off the course. If you join the course, for example, with us, we set a baseline for dreaming yourself into awake awareness. One of the skills that you develop is to be aware within the dream. So there are various types of dreams. There's what we could call samsaric or ordinary dreaming, which can be any one of the many dreams that we have that tend to reflect our everyday experience. So a typical one is you go to your work, you have an argument with your boss, and at night you come home and you dream, you've still got anxiety, you're still bothered, so the pressure's still there, you haven't cleared through the obstacle, and you haven't cleared through the relationship with your boss, so at night you dream it. So that would be considered a samsaric or an ordinary dream. And then a second type of a dream is a dream of clarity. So a dream of clarity is when you actually start to receive messages, intentional messages and information and energy from the cosmos. You get direct pointing outs from teachers, guides, and these are really very important dreams. They sometimes can come almost in the nature of prophetic dreams about something that might happen, and it does happen. They can come in the terms of wisdom. So you're given guidance as to something in your life and you follow it, and it's so deeply grounded and clear and open. So there's that clarity. So that's why they're called dreams of clarity. It brings clarity into your life. And then there are clear light dreams, which are really when you're fully aware and awake within the dream itself. So you're completely lucid, awake, and aware, not just of the dream, but of the awareness within the dream, which is why it's called clear light, because the dream will actually appear like clear light, which if you've experienced that, you'll know exactly what I mean. There is such a degree of clarity and transparency within the dream itself, and it's very pliable. You can actually not only touch clear light, but clear light acts as a channel for spirit, for you to engage and move and transform. So these are very useful practices. So the very first thing to do, on a really basic level, is to be aware that you are going to sleep, and be aware of what kind of state you go into as you go to sleep. So probably the simplest thing to do is to reflect on your day as you go to sleep, and then to rest on a simple quality like love in your heart. So go to sleep with open-hearted awareness. Instead of your awareness being up here behind the eyes as you go to sleep, drop it down. So actually feel it. You can do it now as you're listening to me. You could drop it into the back of your skull. You could even drop it up into a corner of your room and turn back at the one that's lying down in the bed. and then you could drop it down and into your heart. And if it helps, just go to sleep, rest with your hands placed on your heart, and just close your eyes in that deep sense of rest and peace and natural, effortless love. Like that simple. And then observe keep a little journal or a little pad beside your bed, and note down anything that happens as a result. So all you're really doing is you're starting to develop and bring awareness into your nighttime, into your dream, and into your sleep. So I know Kiefer might have something to add about the neural correlates related to the sleep, dream, and lucid awareness practices. And before he does that, I just wanted to ask you, Holly, do you have an example where you might have had either a really clear samsaric or a really clear prophetic or a really clear light dream? Have you experienced that kind of dream at any time in your life?
Yeah, I've had some, thank you for that question. I've had several dreams that have really left profound impact and were the reason that I actually, so one dream in particular was the reason I actually signed up for the dream yoga course. I had what's called a hyper lucid dream. I didn't know it at the time, but through the course, I learned what it was after they described this type of dream. So it's a little bit, it's actually in a kind of separate category as far as I understand it from what Stephen Altair described. I'm not sure where you would put it. Maybe you can tell me. But what happened in this dream was that I was standing on a cliff and was about to fly. And at that moment, I went lucid. I was like, hey, wait a minute, I can't fly. I must be dreaming. And the moment that I recognized that I was dreaming, the sky opened up and became so incredibly clear. It was filled with rainbows, and it was like the earth shattered. It was like the sky shattered into brilliant light. And it was more vivid and real than I would say even this waking world. And that's hard with our conceptual mind to even understand what that means. All I can tell you is was my experience. And when I woke up, I was so blown away by that dream that I kind of was went on to start studying dream yoga because of it. So that's a dream in particular that really stands out to me. And I will mention just one other dream briefly, that I had long kind of chronic illness with mold. And I had a very profound dream where I was in this hut with an old kind of shaman-like character. And I stood in front of her, and she kind of scanned my body with her hands and said that you are clear of the mold. And it had this quality, this impact that was just stunning, I guess. It was like clear. It was so clear and profound. So those two dreams really stick out in my mind as being very important.
They're beautiful. They're beautiful. So I'll pass back to Kiefer, because I know Kiefer really has an incredible depth and knowledge about what actually happens in the brain and the body when you're looking at both waking states and dreaming states and lucid states or lucid dreams.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's such a fascinating concept because it's almost so divergent and like on a spectrum of who we are. And that's like the neural correlates of lucid dreaming, for example, correlate to who we are in that particular dream. And so it's kind of a fascinating question of, okay, well, what areas are activated in context of the dream I just had or the lucid dream? And so you could almost take regular dreaming as a baseline, right? And so as is mentioned, there are many different kinds of dreams, but I think in the ordinary or samsaric dreams, one of the commonalities that maybe we can all kind of relate to is sometimes being ourself, but almost not being ourself in a dream, right? Where it's almost like we're playing a role, or we've been somehow, dropped into this film script of our life, and we're playing it out, and we maybe don't have a lot of knowledge within that dream of, for example, what's the schedule for the next day's work or something like that, or a lot of maybe decision making ability to say, I don't want this dream, I want to change it to something else, or I want to be able to influence this in some way. And so when we're dreaming in that very ordinary like state, a lot of those brain areas begin to kind of tone down and become diminished as we almost enact whatever is the self that is present in that particular dream. So this changes when we get into lucid dreaming quite significantly, and for obvious reasons, right? So if you've had a lucid dream, you kind of understand that moment of lucidity, right? That trigger point where you're in the dream and you're not aware it's a dream, and all of a sudden something happens and your consciousness dramatically transforms, and all of a sudden the you that went to sleep that night, the quote unquote waking you, is now taking greater presence within that lucid dream. And so there are two big areas that influence that we can speak to. One is the precuneus, which is actually in the back of the brain. So kind of right where guys have that male pattern baldness. If you went just under that and a little bit down, that's called the precuneus on the top of the cortex. And that's an area where it's a hub of the default mode network, and seems to be one of the areas that particularly has our self-referential self in it, right? And so you can imagine in the ordinary dream where we don't know we are ourselves. It kind of sounds weird to say, but again, we're just enacting the dream script almost. But when you gain that moment of lucidity, that kind of pops on and goes, oh, I am me. And then that stream of identity that is you becomes attached to the dreaming version of yourself. And you can all of a sudden be like, oh, I am the me that's walking around in this world, just as I'm walking around, in the waking world, I'm now walking around in this dream world. And so the second neurocorrelate that's actually really key to the lucid dreaming process is the activity of the frontal lobes. And so the frontal lobes have a lot to do with what's called like executive decisions, or decision making, or our ability to say, yes to this, no to this, here's what I'm going to say, here's what I'm not going to say, here's what I want, here's what I don't want, and to be able to exercise control over that. Typically, that area is quite diminished, again, in that ordinary dream state, which means whatever the dream has in store for you, again, like that almost scripted kind of movie scene, that's what gets played out. When we gain that lucidity and those areas kind of come back online, so to speak, that decision-making ability is now present within the dream state. And so since, a lot of what the dream entails is constructed by the brain that you are within, and you have the decision-making abilities that come online, one of the key features of a lucid dream is you actually get to decide what you want to do and what you want to dream. And so this is one of the most fascinating and potentially most useful parts of lucid dreaming, and quite frankly, most surreal parts of lucid dreaming is once you're there and you're standing with your own 2 feet in the dream, you can decide whatever it is you want to do. And the only thing that stops you is your willpower, basically. So if you want to fly, I think that's the most common thing that lucid dreamers do. It's something, we're very grounded as ordinary human beings, but you're not in a dream state. So if you decide to fly, you change the script of that dream to be whatever you want. I've known many people that have been very frequent lucid dreamers that have also suffered from chronic nightmares. And when this happens and they recognize that they're within a nightmare, they can consciously decide, well, I don't want this situation, or whatever is frightening me right now, I'd like to, remove it. I'd like to go somewhere safe. I'd like to fly away, or I'd like to just, open up a portal and just step into another dimension, another dream, a completely different experience. And so when we're lucid dreaming, it's bringing online different areas of the brain that piece back in almost like your superpowers, right? You were stripped of your powers in the ordinary dream, and now that you've gained this power of lucidity, you can decide what it is you want to do. And so that's just some of the neural correlates that we see, and some of the reasons why lucid dreaming is so powerful, so surreal, and is such a phenomenal experience that anybody that becomes aware of lucid dreaming automatically wants to start practicing it and getting into it. And so that's just, a small snippet of what is a very, very fascinating field, and also what is a very, expanding field as we continue to learn more in the coming years. So.
Yeah. Thank you, Kiefer. That was a fantastic background and for everybody. And I want to just follow up with a couple points or questions. One is, I just interviewed Max Newland earlier with FocusCom, and he was talking about some research that they're publishing just now in Sarah Lazar's lab in Harvard. And he was saying that what they were looking at in this research was ego development. And in the Western world egoic model, kind of the highest point is this dropping of the egoic self and more metacognition. I think I'm describing that correctly, which he said correlates in the Eastern traditions to an enlightenment state. There's kind of a parallel. And so they were looking at the neural correlates of these different egoic development states. And he specifically said that one of the key conclusions of this study was that at the highest levels, correlating with this kind of dropping of the identified self and developing a more spacious awareness of self, that the precunious changed between people with that level of consciousness and more ordinary consciousness. And he admitted that he wasn't sure exactly which direction it changed. He couldn't quite remember. It had been a few months since he wrote the paper. I know how that is as being a author, but the point is that area of the brain that you were speaking about was the area that they noticed changes in the study. So I thought that was really interesting, because in your case, what you're saying is actually that sense of self comes online in a lucid dream, which makes sense, right? That as soon as we develop that, if that sense of self is coming online inside a dream, we're gaining that lucidity or clarity of who we are. And I gathered from him the kind of opposite happens in these meditative states with the people that they study. They actually reduce that sense of self.
I think it's a good point as well to say that it's that, as you mentioned, it's that product of change, right? That is almost, it's not, going in a particular directionality, or at least a very strong one, but is an optimization of that area, right? And so, we talk a lot about in meditation, for example, getting rid of the DMN, right? Getting rid of the default mode network, upon which the precuneus is a central hub. And that area does come online in lucid dreaming, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're gaining the bad parts of the self, right? Or the parts of the self that we're trying to avoid in meditation. And I think the DMN gets a lot of demonization because we're always trying to shut it off, get rid of it. And I think it's more nuanced than that. It's not getting rid of it, it's how you relate to it. And so often in 2021, in this modern world, as modern humans, how we relate to ourselves, we're often pretty hard on ourselves. And we often have a lot of different things that we attach to ourselves that are quite negative. And it can be easy to want to try and get something to shut that out. But I think what we learn from lucid dreaming and meditation both is that it's not whether the area is on or off or up or down, but how is it related? How is it interconnected with how you relate to everything else? And I think that's one of the fascinating things that we're seeing as neuroscience evolves, is that we're starting to move out of that dichotomy almost of like, do we just need to go, does this need to go up and this need to go down, and starting to be more nuanced about, well, it's actually about this whole brain relationship almost of how do different things relate to each other. And when the default mode network is there, and the default mode network is an incredibly useful evolutionary tool that allows us to navigate our environments and have these individualized human lives and so forth, that it's about refining and optimizing, and that whether you're toning it down in meditation or utilizing it in lucid dreaming, that you're toning it in a way that's healthy, but also might be kind of bidirectional in a weird way and more complex than we as scientists so far understand.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. And especially what you spoke about how everything is relational, relational in the body, but it also makes me think about some concepts that I've been really noodling with in my own explorations, and listening to Thomas Hubel talk about the power of we, his series, and how everything is ultimately relational, and actually thinking about our awakening and our consciousness in a relational sense. So a little bit sort of less de-emphasizing the individual Buddha kind of nature of awakening, but actually this collective awakening, the unity consciousness of, you and I together, kind of generating that awakening through coherence, through the relational nature of consciousness, so that it stops being so much of an I journey and becomes a we journey, which really makes me think about exactly what you said, Stephen Altair, right at the outset. It's about us, it's about we. Yeah.
When you consider it, Holly and Kiefer, we know this from the dream course we've been doing, that there is so much more power in us taking the journey. There is so much more power in the Sangha. It's almost like the community is singing to us. Again, going to the pandemic, what's it singing out to us to do? It's saying, don't isolate and sort this out country by country. Why don't you figure this out as a global situation? Why don't you share data, share resources, get it together? It's like pointing it out so dramatically. So I do think that the power of we, the power of our coherence as a group, and certainly in the dream workshops we've done, that's what people have discovered, this incredible power of doing it together. We inspire each other. And I was considering some of the things that you asked, Holly, previously about, what should people do when they first come on to this practice, or what can they do if they're going to come to this workshop, for example, and they want to do a practice beforehand. So one of them I've already mentioned is just as you're going to sleep. And the other one, of course, is one of the most important practices is to begin dream yoga when you're awake. So we often consider, dream yoga, that's something I do when I'm asleep. But in fact, awareness itself, being aware of your environment, being aware of each other, being aware of the energy of the collective, being aware of how you relate. Exactly as Kiefer was saying, neuroscience is realizing it's about a whole brain relationship, and humanity's realizing it's about a whole we relationship. So trying to be aware when you, for example, experience powerful emotions, you'll probably experience how sometimes powerless you are to stop this outburst of anger or frustration or sadness or whatever comes in terms of the emotion. You might have recognized that you don't have quite as much dexterity over the powerful emotions, especially the negative ones, as you do over the positive ones. So the positive ones, you start to generate appreciation for somebody and it feels very easy. But then the moment that somebody really crosses your path and irritates you, and this anger starts to well up, it's not quite so easy. So you develop awareness around that in your day. So being aware, we start to recognize that what we're looking for is stability while we're awake. And in fact, if you generate and practice that degree of stability while you're awake, you'll find it that much more easy to enter into the dream state with stability. And just as Kiefer was saying, you'll be able to transform your dream state, you'll be able to work with it, and then apply the same skills that you develop during the dream state. And I'm talking about the skills of transformation, creation, and manifestation. You'll be able to apply those with confidence during your life. Because it really, if you talk to any lucid dreamers and they talk about their first lucid dream, it's like a real, just like you were saying, Holly, it's like a real aha. And I'm going to ask Kiefer in a minute because I'm curious about any of his lucid dream experiences, because he's had some wonderful ones. I always remember Kiefer telling me about pulling his, stretching his skin. And I thought, oh, that's one I haven't tried. That was, and so I did that in the next lucid dream experience and found it very, very, very useful. So the experience of stability in life can be brought about through this awake awareness. So one of the practices, of course, if you mentioned Andrew Holacek, and I've been fortunate enough to give a guest talk for Andrew, and one thing that he's always said, and many teachers have said, is that about the illusion of our reality. So, for example, a simple thing to try is that you consider that you're seeing everything in the world, right? That you have this vision but the moment you take 2 playing cards and put them out to your peripheries and just pull them back a bit, you start to realize exactly how there's a certain point you can't actually see. So you take the 2 playing cards, you can do it after this, pull them out and see how actually limited your periphery vision is. And it's the same with things like stability. So we have this illusion of stability, that we're standing on the earth, that it's all very ground and stable. But in fact, the earth is rotating, the earth's moving around the sun, the whole solar system is moving through the Milky Way is moving through and at many, 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 many miles per hour. So we'll talk about 500,000 miles per hour when you get up to the kind of movement of the Milky Way through the galaxy. So these illusions of simple things like stability or vision are actually really powerful wake-up calls to say everything that you perceive is not necessarily how it seems. So I think the awareness, waking up awareness, once you start to be awake to your environment, your relationships, to the way that emotions grab you, so simple things you can do right now as you're listening to me. Bring your eyes up above the computer. Don't look at the computer. Don't look at us. Be aware of the space around the computer. Simply be aware of the space. Just be aware of the space between you and the wall. And then learn to be flexible with awareness. As I mentioned before, you can send your awareness up to a corner of a room and have it look back at you sitting here watching the screen. So stay there for a minute. Just look back at yourself. So we open to the flexibility of awareness. So come back, and instead of coming back into your head, come down into your heart, or even try presencing down into your belly, or drop right down your legs and into your feet. And for a moment, feel the connection of your feet with the ground. Feel that connection, the relationship that Holly and Kiefer have been talking about. Because the we relationship is not just about us. It's about our connection to the planet as well. It's about our connection to the cosmos, to other planets, other worlds, other civilizations. It's about our connection to other dimensions, all of which we have, all of which you have. It's just that we're not aware of them, simply because where do we place our attention? Generally, it's on the computer for hours, or our mobile phone for hours, or all these objects, right? And the objects kind of reinforce back to us that reality is all about objects. So we often don't even consider what's beyond the object. It's a little bit like looking at the night sky and saying, I'm seeing the universe, when in fact you're seeing less than 1% of the universe when you look up into the night sky. And we make those kind of unconscious assumptions about our perception, that we're perceiving and seeing and hearing reality. So these are really good once you start to become aware, just as Kiefer was saying about the relationship with the whole brain, and you become aware of the relationship with all of us and the entire cosmos, then instead of it being about pieces, so for example, you sit down and you watch the news and you get very affected by the news and you believe that that's the reality. Instead of you getting affected by pieces, and when you go to sleep, your experiences and your soul is scattered everywhere, then instead of that, we start to become aware that they're just pieces. We become aware of the illusion. We become aware of the scattered nature of our being, right? Even that is a fundamental insight. When we're aware that that is actually not who we are. We're simply not that identity. We're not the news. We're not the computer. Neither are we with our thoughts, because we know that the thoughts arise, right? And you try and do this now. Simply bring up a thought of somebody you love and let it abide for a moment and let it dissolve. Right? It's fundamentally impermanent. you know that you don't have one thought that sticks with you every day, all the day, running your entire day. You tend to have around about 60,000 thoughts a day. So there's an impermanence to your thoughts. Same with your emotions. Same with your perceptions, right? So that they are not you. And yet there's this awareness that's always present that you're aware of now. You're aware of us. You're aware of the space. You're aware of your thoughts. You're aware of your emotions. You're aware of your perceptions. So there's an unborn and uncreated awareness that's always present. It's timeless, has no time, right? There's no past. There's no future. There's no identity in that awareness. So when you turn inwards towards that awareness during your day, if you just simply turn inwards often enough, turn inwards to that space of great peace and all embracing love that's literally present always, then you simply open yourself to the infinite opportunities, right? Because when you turn inwards towards awareness, you can't find any edge. There's no boundary to awareness, because awareness is able, you know right now, if you bring that thought up again, bring up a thought of an animal that you love, or a dog or a cat or a pet that you know, right? You can hold that in your awareness. Where's it coming from? It's coming out of this unborn nature of awareness itself. And you suddenly go, oh, I'm not that thought. I can bring that thought up. I can be aware of it. So those are simple beginnings when you're awake and aware during your day. Then when you start to do the dream practices, you have really direct insights into the nature of awareness and the power of awareness to simply embrace and to be boundless. And this once you start to touch the qualities of boundlessness in your life, you start to realize your life is unbound, that there's no edges, there's no boxes other than the ones that you've created. And those are incredibly profound realizations. They suddenly open you to the infinite possibilities in your life. And so in the course that we do, that's what we open you to. We begin by setting a baseline for this awake awareness. So we actually begin from you waking up, that very important awake awareness that brings profound insight. And then we take you into preliminary practices that allow you to look at the different types of dreams, and then into the energy body, and allow you to purify the energy body so that you start to become really aware of subtle energy and the way that subtle energy moves through your system, and the way this can affect the subtle energy body. Because the subtle energy body is a bridge from the physical body to the light body. So we go deeply into these practices. We go into healing practices that you can use when entering into sleep and during your daytime. We go into the illusory body. So ways in which you can, during your day, you can wake up to the illusory nature of everything that's around you. And then we go into how to deal with some of the struggles, how to deal with pain, anxiety, confusion. Right? We all have them. I had, as a result of that, dream as a young boy, I had a lot of anxiety in my early years in dreams, and I learned how to deal with them simply by being aware of the anxiety and embracing or welcoming the anxiety and not pushing it away and neither grabbing onto it. So dealing with anxiety at nighttime is really crucial. And then what it means to transform into open, empty clarity, and to liberating awareness or clear light. And then meditation practices, so ways that you can deepen this. And then also living and dying. A really important part of the practices of clear light yoga, dream yoga, and sleep yoga was always the practice of living and dying. So we go into that, look at transitional processes. So one of the lucid dreams I had related to this, because I practice, there's many different ways to practice, which we go into, and there are different personalities connected to different ways of practicing. And one of my practices is that I find very easy is, as I go to sleep, I simply honor the goddess within, and I go to sleep as the goddess. So as in this case for me, Kuan Yin. And so as I sleep as her, I enter a hypnagogic state very easily. And the hypnagogic state, if you're not familiar with that, is where it's very lucid and light. It's like you're passing into vision. So all kinds of visions come up in my consciousness. And as I just simply allow them. So a lot of this is about being aware and allowing, which is one of the big practices. As you're aware and you allow this hypnagogic state simply to take hold, it's a little bit like welcoming again, then I use the energy of the hypnagogic state to enter into a lucid dream. So one of these practices that, one of the lucid dreams I had, for example, was that I was in a airline flight. I was in a flight, and at a certain point in the dream, and I'd been practicing during the day, but you can imagine this very easily. In the dream, the plane was going down. I was with my brother, and I remember it vividly. The plane was going down, it was going to crash, and it was obviously going to be a disaster. Now, normally when the plane, I've had lots of dreams where I'm falling off a cliff, and before I actually hit the rocks, I wake up. And in this case, I decided to just stay aware. So the plane crashed, it went underwater, and I drowned. And I actually had full awareness of me drowning. I can assure you it wasn't pleasant. And to actually experience it in a dream like that while I'm aware it tests a lot of, tests you want to wake up. And because I was very aware, I knew that I had a choice not to wake up. So I just stayed with it, and I died. And that's quite unusual. I've mentioned this dream to different Rinpoches and teachers, and they've nodded and raised their eyebrows as I tell them, because I know it is unusual. And then from that, I then passed through into the bardo, so I could actually see, and it was incredible. I woke up. I'm not generating these. I'm literally just aware as it's unfolding in my unconscious, and it's for all intents and purposes, it's real. I'm feeling everything. I'm smelling, seeing, 100%. It was as clear as if I was here today. Obviously, my body didn't die. So there was some aspect of it where the body was completely asleep, because otherwise, I'm sure at that point, if all my physiological functions had responded to what my body was thinking was happening, then I would be dead. And instead, because I held this awareness wide open, I was able to pass through, and it was absolutely astounding. I could pass through into the bardos and see the various light forms, the Buddhas, the Christ, everything that arose, really past lives. It was incredible. And it lasted it felt like it lasted a lifetime. And when I came out of it, I really, really knew the power of awareness to be able to do that. Kiefer had mentioned, about times when you come in and out of dreams, or you choose, for example, you're in a nightmare and you go into that portal of the nightmare aware, and so you pull out of it. You can change worlds, so to speak, and that's quite true. And I've had the opposite kind of experience just purely because I wanted to try this, because I'm quite a versatile lucid dreamer, having done it a long time. So in this particular one, I remember there was it was a pretty horrific dream, so I don't recommend you try these. But anyway, in the dream, there was a monster murdering my family, and I experienced all of that. It was horrific. And there was no chance that this was a monster, so it was big. And I was very aware in the dream, so I stayed with that awareness. And I had already decided the practice was going to be a compassionate practice. So I simply stayed in that awareness of compassion. It was awfully difficult, I can tell you, but it was doable because I was very, very aware. And I brought that awareness to that monster. And then at the time when the monster turned on me, I turned on the full, you might bring me to tears if I'm not careful. I brought the full force of compassion into that creature's heart and prayed that it be liberated from the hell realm where it was going to go to for having killed my family. And it did. It actually liberated, and I suddenly found myself in the hell realm as this being of light. able to liberate all these beings in the hell realm. So by consciously choosing compassion with awareness and actually being aware for that creature within the lucid dream, I was then able to enter the hell realms, and I proceeded through a whole variety of, hell realms, ghostly realms, also other realms, able to liberate entities within the lucid dream before I emerged up into other realms like the human realms and the demigods and the god realms and the clear light realms. So it was really, that also was a very profound dream. So, and we end up in the dream course pointing out the nature of mind. So pointing out that you truly are awareness and the qualities of awareness itself, and seeing things as they are with real openness, clarity, love, and compassion. So I'm going to hand back to you, Holly, in a minute. I wanted to hear Kiefer on his lucid dream experiences, because he's also, like you, Holly, and like many of you listening, is a remarkable lucid dreamer.
No, thank you, Stephen. It's almost one of those ones where it's like, what do I pick, right? Because like lucid dreaming and dreaming in general is almost like a comic book of like, oh, you want issue 172 or the first appearance of when I flew for the first time, or do you want, issue 375, and so on and so forth. And I think the one I'll pick, just to tell a brief story, is the one that you mentioned that began with skin pinching, right? Because that's also a useful didactic kind of story, because skin pinching is something that I use as a way of telling if I'm in a dream or not. And so I actually did it as we were sitting here, and you didn't see, but I had my hands kind of down, and just very subtly, I'll do this thing where I'll just pull between my thumb and my forefinger, and I'll just pull the skin there. And I got myself into the habit of doing that so that my brain would just do it without me thinking about it. And the interesting thing there is when you build a habit like that, eventually you'll actually do it in a dream. And so I chose skin pinching for a reason. And so people have researched, mnemonic induced lucid dreaming. They might have heard of the skin pinching technique before. And basically, the foundational principle is that there are things in dreams which are different from reality that we can count on as little tests of which dimension am I in? I mean, the dream dimension, or I'm in the quote unquote real dimension. For us in this waking world, at least on our scale, we have Newtonian physics, right? That again, at our scale, works reasonably reliably. And so for us in our skin, you can pinch your skin and notice that it doesn't go very far. It'll pull a little bit, but according to your elasticity, but not too far. In a dream, for whatever reason, that's not the case. So in a dream, you'll do the exact same thing. You'll pull your skin, and like you're pulling chewing gum or taffy or something, it'll just go and go and go and go, and you let it go and it snaps right back. And so one time I woke up in a dream, right? So I was in a dream, waking up in my bedroom at the time that was my family home. So it was very, very sneaky. It was, I woke up thinking it was my normal wakefulness. Here's my room, here's my bed, here's my desk. All right, I'll go out, I'll go to the bathroom, same normal routine. Walked out, got up, went to go walk out the door, and just subconsciously did that little skin pulling thing, and it went and went and went and went. And I was like, click, there it was. And I realized I am in a dream right now. And I had that snap, that moment of lucidity where everything just filtered in, like me loaded into myself, right? And I remembered, and I was like, this is so exciting. This is the first time this skin pinching thing has worked for me. And I remember going down the hallway at that time, and my whole family was there. And I was like, oh, actually, I'm in a dream. I really want to fly. So I beelined it straight out the door, and I went out and was standing in the front yard and was like, oh, I'm going to, take off like Superman right here, right now. This is it. And this is also a funny little thing about dreams was the rest of my family, followed me out onto the lawn. And so my youngest sister in the dream went out onto the street. So we live in a urban, a neighborhood. And so as I was gearing up to kind of take off and go somewhere else, my little sister just walked out into the street. And even though I knew it was a dream, even though I was like, everything here is, if something happened to my little sister, it wouldn't affect her in real life. It wouldn't, but before I took off, before I flew, I was like, I can't leave her on the street. I can't, big brother instincts. I don't know what it is. And so I did a little like magic, energy thing. I actually shot out of my finger, and it shot this kind of purple beam of light at her, and it covered her in this like little bubble, kind of a force field. And so once I was satisfied that she was protected, the dream version, I was like, all right, you're set. I'm gonna take off here. I'll see you guys later. And basically went and took off and flew around and seeing all different things. And so that's one of the my lucid dreaming stories that I enjoy telling for two reasons. One, because of the skin pinching and how things change in dreams and how we can use that to realize we're in a dream. And second, how real, and as Holly mentioned, how almost realer the dreams can seem, even though in your mind it's, okay, you got hit by a car, you wouldn't die. Nothing. I would wake up and you'd be in your bed and you'd be fine. But it was like, I just couldn't do it. I just, there's something in my brain that was like, this seems very, very real, and I need to make sure you're protected before I move on. And so I think that's why dreams are such fun stories to tell, and such a surreal and fascinating and enlightening practice to really get into, because it really makes you reflect upon yourself and everything, right? Yeah.
Kiefer, I realized that I thought there was a brain behind you, but that's actually your superpower. It's like your purple, your Jedi power that you use on people when you want to keep them safe.
yeah, that follows me around all the time. So this it's my real background. No virtual.
I really realize, and I did want to ask Holly one more question, because I'm present to the time, but I did want to just say, Holly, I always remember an experience you told me about intention, something to do with running down the street and dragons and other things. So I just thought that'd be a really nice way to bring this to a close, because for somebody out there, who's listening to us and really wants to bring this strong sense of, intention into their day to help them to lucid dream. One way that I know many lamas and rinpoches talk about is saying, this is a dream, so that you start to kind of evaporate the appearing solidity of this world, this three-dimensional world. And that doesn't necessarily work for everybody. And I know you found a particular way that worked for you, because I think we kind of customize our phrase, this is a dream, into a way that actually makes sense for us, in a way that we can break through the seeming solidity of what's present into what lies beyond. So I just would love you to share that.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So, the learning to lucid dream is, when we talk about it, kind of, you might think that it's a fairly easy skill, but actually I think for a lot of us, it's a very difficult skill. It's something that you really have to put a lot of intention behind in order to make it real, to manifest that. And so after doing I would describe all the things that people say to do, including telling yourself this is a dream, doing reality checks like Kiefer mentioned, so I have my own kind of putting my hand through my finger, and trying some of the wake-induced lucid dreaming techniques, and falling asleep consciously, waking yourself up in the middle of the night. These are all known lucid dreaming techniques. And so I've been practicing those for a while and not very successful at them. And one of the things that I read or was told was just the importance of the power of intention. You really really bringing a very strong power of intention is one of the most important things you can do. And you can say, I will lucid dream tonight, 21 times over. That's one of Andrew Holacek's, as you're falling asleep. But I think it's pretty easy for that to get fairly kind of rote, that you're just sort of, I will lucid dream, and you're not really bringing the power of intention. So one of the things that I did one night when I was just really intent to have a lucid dream that night was I did two things really. The first one was I spent some time really really thinking through what I would actually want to happen in a lucid dream. So in this case, I decided that I really wanted to be able to manifest a dragon in my lucid dream, and be in this dragon world kind of castle and dragon and all that. So I had this picture painted in my mind of what I was going to manifest. And then I really brought my attention to it by dancing around in the streets that night. So like I just kind of, there wasn't really anybody around, but I was in just kind of neighborhood, and I just decided to skip around and really say to the world out loud, I will lucid dream tonight, and just bring kind of a joy and exuberance to it and that heartfelt intention. And sure enough, that night, I actually was able to have a lucid dream with a manifested dragon. So there you go. Happy ending to my.
That's so happy. So now, of course, it's, that people are going to have people dancing in the streets, and they'll just say, oh yeah, that's Holly. Yeah, that was Holly's pointing out. Just go dance in the streets exuberantly and yell out, I want to be a dragon. I can see this appealing to millions, especially in this current state of the world.
It could really catch on, right?
I think it's pretty catchy.
We'll call it the
anyway,
Holly.
back to you, Holly. Yeah, the Holly, the holiday, right? It's a whole new way of being.
Oh, that's too funny. Well, I am aware of the time, and so just kind of parting words for everybody. We are teaching a course called Dream Yourself into Awakening. Starts June 7th, and you can go to HeartMind Alchemy, our website, and go to workshops, and there's a Dream Yourself into Awakening page, and you can learn more about the course there, and we would absolutely love to have you. It's a beautiful intimate group, I feel like, that we cultivate. We've had in previous workshops, we've had wonderful feedback from, if I do say so, I think that we're allowed to promote that. We've just really had some amazing feedback from the people that have joined our courses, who've talked about how it has really changed their path, brought them a lot of various levels of awakening for wherever they were. And it's deeply honoring to do this work and support people on their personal journey. And we would love to support you on your personal journey in this next round of courses. And so I'm just going to throw it over to Kiefer to any parting words that you would like to add before we sign off.
Yeah, it's just always a pleasure to have these discussions. And I think they're just fruitful and insightful from so many directions. And really, I think what we got into here is just the tip of the iceberg that is dreaming and lucid dreaming and illusory body yoga and all these just wonderful things that really blossom and unfold and really help people understand their journey and who they are and who we are as human beings, in this existence. And so always just happy to have the opportunity to talk and just discuss lucid dreaming and everything that's related to it. So thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you, Kiefer. Absolutely. Stephen, parting words from you?
Just simple parting words from me. So once again, don't look at me. Be aware of the space around your computer and just bring lucid presence into your day, and you'll bring lucid presence into your dreaming and into your night. So that's my parting words. It's really our honor. And Holly, thank you for the invitation. And it's always wonderful to do it with my birthday buddy, Kiefer. And you're such a remarkable being. So is everybody listening. We'd welcome you on the course, and we also just reach out to us and say hi. If you don't know us already, we'd love to answer any of your questions. If you've got anything you just want to know, just reach out, because we love you all.
Absolutely. All right. Take care, well-being. Good night, everybody. Have a beautiful weekend wherever you are in the world. Loving blessings to you, to your family. And yeah, we hope to see you soon. All right.